There we go. All right. Well, it is top of the hour, and we've got a pretty good sized group with us. And in the interest of time, we've got a couple of guests or presenters at first that we'll bring up. Sue, I know that your time is limited. Would love to have you jump on and share with us about what's going on in your state. So if you want to go ahead and get that started, that would be great. If you're on mute. But here we go. Still muted. Still muted. Oh, it looks like you're talking, Sue, and it's still muted.
All right, how about now?
Yeah, now we got you.
Hey, yay. Well, hello. I just said nice to see everybody again. I won't be long in telling you kind of where we are, but as most of you all know, we're in the very beginning stages of an extremely long recovery for our western part of our state. I want to start off by thanking the many horse councils who have checked in with us, who have put out information about donations to our North Carolina Horse Council Foundation as we are collecting funds for the long haul here so that we can, after the first rush of people bringing up supplies and people bringing the hay and the feed and the fencing and so forth, as that interest dies down, which is where we're reaching right now, we hope to have the resources now available for the long run. And I just want to thank many of you who have posted to your councils, and we have raised through those external funding sources over $25,000 right now. So you guys have been very effective in helping us with that effort. We do not have total counts of number of farms, number of equine or livestock in general impacted. We continue to work on that. Many farms are just buried so deep under rubble that we're still just in the process of recovering, getting roads and access in. Our mule packers did a tremendous job during this recovery period in packing in supplies. As many of you know, it was in Appalachia. The culture is a little different there. The roads, the access points and so forth are different. And many of our places continue to be only accessible by ATV or mules or horses. So we've become a big part of the recovery in itself. Our biggest rescue of the largest herd of horses was 22. We were able to get all but a handful of those horses out to safety, bringing them there through 2 major waterways and down the road on roads that I wouldn't have driven, but thanks to one of our board members and one of our rescue, Justin McLeod, he was able to manipulate and maneuver and get the vast majority of those equine out. None of that herd was impacted, and we're continue to look for rehoming a lot of those animals. And the animals that were rehomed, we're holding. Most of those have not returned to the western part as we're
Sarah
building
Coleman
barns.
joined the meeting.
As we're building the barns and the fencing. So fencing is now becoming one of the largest needs that we have to try to get some of those pastures fenced back in and regrown and rebuilt. Extension has done a phenomenal job as the resource holder and as being able to get a generalized form out. We were very well prepared in the response pattern, but when things happen, you always, wait to see where those holes are. I think we've done a pretty good job at that this year, much better than in some hurricanes. Our difference is topography, geography, and never anticipated this in the area in which it hit. So I'll be able, if you have questions, I certainly can answer those. We had a wonderful concert in Charlotte this weekend, raising millions of dollars for aid from our North Carolina professional performing artists. So, we are continuing to build those resources every day. And that's about all I got, kiddo. Want to thank too many of our private farms. Tryon has done a magnificent job as being a center for us up there, as well as our state-owned facilities. But Tryon really stepped it up, putting a hospital in there for people, for some of our first responders who came from other parts of the state, for distribution. Everybody's amazing. I think how well the local communities have really banded together in this particular tragedy.
Well, if at any time you still have a gap or a need for resources and you want to let us know, then we'll continue to share that information out and around. Anybody
Yeah,
have
I would
questions?
like to, if your councils have social media and access and want to help, the best thing we're telling everyone, all of the different resources, their Baptist Mission or Samaritan's Purse, the Horse Council, give to our foundations. And we have a North Carolina Horse Council Foundation with 100% earmark that all those dollars go directly to the equine community for ours, go directly to the equine community that was impacted. So we just ask you to keep that up, because people want to think this is a 3-week, a month-long process. This is probably a 2 or 3 year long process at the best.
Pretty significant. Any questions for Sue from anyone?
Sue, this is Bud Wills. Do you have any
Hey, Bud.
idea of how big an area you're talking about?
Oh, Bud, this is a third of our western part of the state, running down through
Okay.
Kentucky, Tennessee, all through the Appalachian Mountains through there, Bud.
Okay.
Asheville was the largest city impacted. Asheville's already on its road to recovery because people knew it and put resources in. We've got our far western tip up in Canton, which is we're getting close to recovery, and we actually opened a portion of the Blue Ridge Parkway this weekend. A very small portion, but open, because this is tourist season too, and the communities are losing their income from that as well. But Kentucky, Tennessee, all down through the Appalachian, the Blue Ridge Mountains through there were impacted, Bud.
Okay.
Are they able to vote?
Wow.
Go ahead.
Are you guys able to get to any voting? You're gonna be able to vote?
They have set up a different voting process for that part of our state. We do have early voting already active. It was active the week after this impacted. It is probably going to impact the vote, we think, some, but we do have some ability. They are making some exceptions and ability to try to make sure we have voting access to most of our citizens. It's going to be really hard to tell. I think we are going to see a significant reduced vote from that area.
Heartbreaking stuff. But it's good to hear there's a lot of resources coming in. So Sarah,
Yeah.
you're on. I know you jumped on here a little bit ago. Are you, since your state is impacted in some way as well, have you had any reports or any updates from that, or any needs that are coming out of that?
I'm so sorry, from Helene, my phone cut out for half a second. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
No, we've had 0 reports in Kentucky at all of anybody needing assistance or having any issues.
Okay.
We have a lot of resources that came in from Kentucky, by the way, a lot.
Very
Yes, for sure. No, I know. And they did a great job. I think they were so heartened by how much we have been helped during our natural disasters that I mean, the horse community, there's nothing quite like them rallying and mobilizing, for sure.
Yeah.
All is good. All right. Well, we'll continue to pray for you, and we'll continue to share out the fundraising link. So Sue, thank you so much for your time. Well, next up we have with us Dr. Angela Pelzel McCluskey. She's an equine epidemiologist and strategy and policy. I'm not exactly sure of your full title with USDA APHIS, and she's going to share with us updates on rising numbers of piroplasmosis and EIA. And I will just, she's got her screen up, and I will turn it over to you now.
Thanks so much. And my heart goes out to you, Sue. It reminds me that I have a great presentation I ought to bring back to you guys on the impacts of climate change on equine infectious disease. So we'll do that one another time. but because I think it's a good topic of the day. But this is another great topic of the day. So as was said, I'm the National Equine Epidemiologist. My job is to respond to cases of regulated equine disease in all 50 states. And I work with your state animal health officials in each of your states to do that job. And as you can imagine, we're super duper busy, and I'm the only one of us we have. So that's fun. But we wanted to talk today and give you some updates on EIA and pyroplasmosis, and specifically because you'll see these topics in the news lately. A lot of things have hit on the Equine Disease Communication Center the last few weeks about some outbreaks that we've had that you may have seen. And I just kind of want to bring you up to speed. The reason being, the old version of these diseases that I learned about in vet school 25 years ago is not how they are today. The epidemiology of both of these diseases just in the last 10 years has completely shifted. And so we have new populations of horses being impacted and new high-risk groups that you guys need to be aware of. So I really appreciate the opportunity to bring you guys this info. I'm not going to delve too deeply in the diseases. You guys can look up some of this yourself, but I do want to get us all on the same page so you know how these changes have occurred over time. So EIA is a virus, right? But it's a retrovirus. So that's really, it's our closest living relative to HIV in humans. So that should automatically give you some information about how difficult this virus is to deal with, right? No treatment, no cure, no vaccine for it. So look how long it's taken us to save humans from HIV and development of AIDS. That's why this virus is where it is for us as far as untreatable, uncurable. Acute and chronic phases, once horses survive the acute phase of the disease, they become a lifelong carrier and they serve as a transmission source for other horses. Can look like anything at all in the horse. Chronically infected horses usually look clinically normal. They may show a bit of anemia, but you may not really see anything after the acute phase of the disease. And even in the acute phase, you may not see anything but maybe a fever. This is hematogenous transmission, so bloodborne. Think bloodborne transmission on this. And a very long incubation period. So here's typically how it spreads. So what I learned about in vet school, right, was the natural fly bite transmission. And you guys may know that too. Very specific blood-sucking flies that transmit this, the tabanid species. So those are our horse flies and our deer flies. And also Stomoxys can do this, the stable fly. They have to have really specific mouth parts in order to get blood on that mouth part, hack and slash, and get a lot of blood on the mouth parts. And then they fly when they get swatted at, right? Because this is a painful bite. And they move to another horse and they transmit by the bloodborne transmission. This is like a direct, it's not a biologic mechanism. It's just a mechanical transmission, blood from one horse to blood to another horse. Mosquitoes cannot do this. They don't have the right kind of mouth parts. So very specific types of flies we're talking about. That's the natural transmission. Our problem now is no longer really with much natural transmission. It's with this second category, and you guys may have heard of this. Iatrogenic transmission is a human-caused transmission, usually using some type of medical equipment or medical process. So reuse of needles, syringes, and IV sets between horses, direct blood doping or blood transfusion between horses, and certainly historically, when we weren't really good with our dental and our surgical instruments, this could transmit that way. But mainly this is owners and trainers with needles in their hands that are transmitting this, not really through your veterinary practice, okay? There's some other ways you can transmit it that are a little bit more rare. It can go mare to foal in uterus, so we can't keep EIA positive mares and breed them. They're gonna infect their foals in most cases. It's in their milk. For stallion, it's in the semen. So we can't keep infected stallions around and use them for breeding. And there was a really weird case in Ireland in 2006 where in a veterinary clinic, the horse died of the disease and bled out. The horse had gotten the disease from infected blood products that were illegally brought in from Romania to Ireland. Horse died of the disease. The veterinary staff tried to clean up all the blood in the stall, and they got out their pressure washer to do this. And they pressure washed the stall and they aerosolized all that blood with virus in it, and it actually spread up and down the clinic barn aisle to other horses in the clinic. So very strange method of transmission, but you can see all of this really revolves around the blood of infected horses. We do a lot of testing. You guys know this. You've all had Coggins tests done on your horse. We do about 1.3 million tests a year in the US. It's probably the largest livestock testing program ever conceived anywhere. And obviously movement to shows, events, change of ownership, interstate movement, all of those are reasons why we test. The testing's done at approved laboratories. So we have over 400 USDA approved laboratories where the testing is going on. And in general, over the years, as we've decreased the number of positives since the 1970s, we have a very, very low nationwide prevalence in the general horse population. You can see the stat there, 0.004%. That's tiny, right? The problem now is that the high risk group for where we find positive cases has changed, and our numbers of positives are actually going up instead of continuing to go down now. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. When we find a positive, they get two choices. Either euthanasia. This is really a debilitating disease long-term for the horse anyway, so it's a humane euthanasia that we're doing. They also serve as a transmission source, a reservoir, right? Like I said, so we really can't keep them around. If you try to keep them around, we have to quarantine them for life 200 yards away from any other horse. And that's to prevent that fly bite transmission. The flies can only go about 200 yards with all that blood on their mouth parts before the virus dries up and it's not really transmissible anymore. So the 200-yard rule is really important and really helpful if we try to keep them alive. But it's that increasing case count that I kind of want to talk to you about. So this is just last year's cases. You can always get our annual reports on EIA on the USDA EIA page. Last year was a pretty low year. We only had 61 cases. You can see though where it is all across the country. This is not typically anymore in that Gulf Coast swamp fever region that you may remember from history. Now we find these all over the United States. And it's definitely not related to fly bite transmission as much anymore. So out of these 61 cases last year, 40 cases were in quarter horse racehorses with that iatrogenic transmission. So humans causing this. These are 100% preventable cases, right? They should not exist, should not be happening. Here, I only had 8 horses that were in these historic untested, undertested populations where we think that fly bite transmission would have played a role there. And then we have this other problem of illegal movement of horses into the United States from Mexico. Mexico is endemic for both EIA and piroplasmosis, and there's no testing or control programs at all. So Mexico is a constant source of pressure of this disease moving northward. And that smuggled horse situation is another place where we really find infiltration of the disease into the US. So like I said, low number of cases relatively last year. I'm going to tell you right now, this year, 2024, I already have 111 cases and the year is not over. Okay, so you see what I'm talking about. We're getting upwards of 100 cases a year usually. And that's the wrong direction. We used to be down towards 40 cases a year of that natural fly bite transmission. Don't get worried about this. 9 horses were an undetermined source. They were in one of these 3 categories, okay? I just couldn't prove which one. And some of them were in both, were both smuggled and quarter horse race. So I couldn't tell which it was, okay? But these are really where our problems lie. And again, that preventable iatrogenic transmission is what is our biggest problem right now. When I talk about a shift in epidemiology, this sort of demonstrates what's been happening recently. So let me orient you a little bit. The green bars are the number of horses that year where we had, that's how many EIA cases that year. And the little blue bar next to it is how many of those were quarter horse racehorses with iatrogenic transmission. And we were doing okay until about 2017. And all of a sudden, the blue bar has started to take over the predominant number of our cases every year. So ever since 2017, the majority of our EIA cases every single year are this quarter horse racehorse preventable with good biosecurity, iatrogenic transmission situation. And unfortunately, a lot of these horses have ties to unsanctioned or bush track racing, which we're going to talk about here just in a minute. And some of these are dual infected with piroplasmosis organisms. That's iatrogenic. Getting both diseases at the same time, that's a human caused phenomenon. So this is really where the epidemiology has changed. This is where we're going to stay unless we do something different in the quarter horse race industry or relative to this bush track situation. So switching gears just real quick, we'll talk about Puro for a minute and then we'll kind of bridge it all back together. Pyroplasmosis is actually a foreign animal disease in the United States. We are not supposed to have it on the US mainland. And unfortunately, we are finding cases now every single year. We're talking about different organisms, 2 organisms, Theileria equi and Babesia cabali. These are blood parasites. So they are organisms that are attached to the red blood cells, and they're normally transmitted by ticks. Okay, so this is usually a tick. The natural transmission cycle is a tick-borne transmission, and not all ticks, certain species of ticks. The other way this transmits is through direct movement of blood between horses. So blood and blood products, or again, that iatrogenic transmission is now playing a role for us. That's kind of our problem. Not to frighten you, but we did find a new Theileria organism just a few years ago, Theileria hainii. We don't think this one's really significant. It's not clinically very bad in the horse, but the rest of the world is trying to get their hands wrapped around what this means. Everybody's going to find Theileria hainii if they go look for it. So we're not really sure globally what folks are going to do with that one. The clinical signs like this are like EIA. So anytime I have an EIA suspect, I should also be testing for pyroplasmosis, or in the high-risk groups, we should be testing for both diseases. So it can look like anything, but once they're chronically infected with pyro, you're not going to see any clinical signs. They're racing, they're training, they look fit, they look fine. You might see a little bit of anemia on their blood smear, but generally they do survive the initial stages of the disease. This disease is endemic across most of the world. So most of the world does not care about this. It is part of their population. They have no qualms about it. But the United States is supposed to be pyro-free. Again, we're a free country. And so that's why we're testing all of the import horses. If you've ever imported a horse into the United States, it got tested for pyroplasmosis if it came from anywhere but Canada or Iceland. It got tested negative for import. We used to have this in Florida. We had a huge outbreak in Florida in the 1960s. They worked really hard to eradicate it, and they actually eradicated the whole tick. They eradicated the Anacin or nitens tick from South Florida to get rid of this disease. It took them 20 years and millions of dollars. So we really don't want to do this again, right? This is difficult. We do have several competent tick vectors across the United States, not just the South or the Southeast. So if we got pyro horses here and we allowed them to contact with our competent tick vectors, we could become an endemic country. And that's what we're really trying hard to avoid. So at the recent outbreaks we have, we didn't think we had any trouble at all until about 08 and 09. We started hitting some bush track racehorse clusters that were infected with pyro, and some of them were actually quite sick. We found a group in Florida in 2008, and then I found a group in Missouri in 09. And again, these were all bush track, and it was all iatrogenic transmission, no ticks involved at all, really strange. And we published on those cases because it was the first time we had recognized this situation. My Missouri case specifically was a blood doping situation. The horse got very sick. The owner had blood doped the horse prior to its race that Saturday. Horse got sick, presented to a veterinary hospital, and that's how we found the case. But really, really a shock to us because we didn't know where this came from. We also had a major outbreak in Texas in 2009 that was tick-borne. And it had ended up being there for 30 years. So that was something that had been sitting there festering, and we just didn't know it was there. The ranch had been moving horses from their ranches in Brazil, where their pyro is endemic and the ticks are endemic. They were moving horses by plane back and forth to their ranch in Texas. And that's how they ended up with a huge infection. I'm very happy to tell you, we permanently eradicated that infection from the whole ranch. It took us 11 years to get rid of it. So we don't want to do that again, right? We know that if we get it here and we have the right ticks, we can propagate this just like what happened on that one ranch. Since that time period, though, we've had just some very specific findings. Horses previously imported into the United States. Prior to 2005, we had a different import test we were using prior to 2005 that wasn't really very good at picking up chronic reactors. We have fixed that and have turned that spigot off. So some of these are still alive. Most of them are dying out. So that one is one that's going away. But these remain. The horses smuggled from Mexico. Again, the disease is endemic in Mexico. No treatment, no control. And quarter horse racehorses in both sanctioned and unsanctioned racing. Transmission again, that's where we're finding these cases now. Okay, so lots of surveillance going on even for Puro, even though it's a foreign animal disease. We've got testing to enter about 10 different states sanctioned racetracks. That's been really helpful. We've got a lot of export testing going to other countries sometimes. You all have seen some tit for tat interstate movement testing over the years on certain states that have had problems like Texas in the past. And we did do a lot of testing in 2010, 2011 to interspecific events. If you were showing high-level quarter horses back in 2010, 2011, we did a huge World Show set of testing to get into AQHA World Show events. 10, 20,000 show horses tested, no positives. So we can show some really clean populations with some of this historic testing. We're testing about 20,000 horses a year through all of this testing that remains. So we've got a pretty good look at it to know where we really have a problem, and it's ringing true over and over and over again, specific high-risk populations that we're finding. When you get a positive, limited number of things you can do, but better than EIA. We can euthanize, right? Because this is a pretty chronic infection. We can export out of the country because all these other countries have it already. So exporting is another way to do it. Lifetime quarantine, if nobody wants to do anything with them and just keep them quarantined, keep them alive, that's okay. But this is the favorite option, the quarantine with enrollment in the treatment. We can treat this, we can clear this in most cases. And this is the United States exit strategy right here. When I find Puro positives, we try to treat them, clear them, get them back to their life, keep their value retained, all of that. So that's our exit strategy. Now, if it's dual infected with EIA, can't fix it, right? Because I can't treat EIA. So the dual infecteds are a problem, but we are treating lots of Puro cases as soon as we find them. Last year, really low numbers. Out of about 20,000 horses that we tested last year, only 14 cases in 6 states, but look at the breakdown. Quarter horse racehorses, iatrogenic transmission, preventable situation, and a couple of horses were illegal imports directly from Mexico. So that's another place where we really have a problem. I hate this too. Look, dual infected, 2 horses. That means I can't save those. I can't treat those. So Puro is getting a little bit better, I would say, not nearly as bad as EIA. EIA is definitely going in the wrong direction. So most of these horses, the EIA infected and the Puro infected, have this quarter horse race situation, right? But most of them have some sort of history with bush track racing. I hope you guys have heard a little bit about bush tracking the last few years. We've really tried to be as transparent as possible about what this has become. These are any races that are not at sanctioned racetracks. And just in investigating these disease cases, I now have a list of confirmed locations of over 191 bush tracks in 30 states. If you think your state doesn't have bush tracking, I guarantee you're wrong. You have it. It is there. It is in our backyards. These guys are super sophisticated. They have regularly scheduled race days, full race cards. It's a whole entertainment event for the day. They market everything on social media. It's not hidden at all. It's all in Spanish. So use your Google Translator if you're looking these up. If you aren't fluent in Spanish, but really, really sophisticated social media outreach. And they have a massive fan base because of that social media base. So 6-7 years ago, we didn't really see a lot of bush tracking because the social media piece had not got going. And now that they use social media as their communication pathway, this has just mushroomed into a massive industry right under our noses. They usually have food and alcohol sales on site. No, they do not have a liquor license. There are many, many laws that are being broken at the bush tracks, and we'll go through some of that here in a minute. But thousands of spectators, and this is all online. You can see they record races. Some of them have drone video. All the videos you can look up and see a variety of different welfare issues and things you would not obviously see on a sanctioned track. But again, very sophisticated how they're doing this. So this is bush tracking today. Okay, I don't want you to think that this is a couple of guys in the back pasture match racing. This is massive, okay? These are what bush tracks look like in America today. Thousands of spectators, many, many horses that come to compete. And it's regionally based, so they move regionally between different tracks. Obviously, from my side, for the disease portion, the animal health impacts are really important to me as a veterinarian. So since 2008, since we started seeing the bush track rise begin, and again, like I said, just exploded the last 6 or 7 years, I've had over 1,000 quarter horse racehorses in this population infected with either pyroplasmosis or EIA or both by iatrogenic transmission. So 4 main ways they're spreading this, okay? Needle, syringe, and IV set reuse between horses. I've learned that they're doing a little better single needle, single syringes, but there's that one IV rubber tubing set and they use it on everything in the barn. Okay, that gets blood back into the line. And as you use it on multiple horses in a row, you transmit bloodborne disease the whole way down. So that's kind of a really common one that they don't really notice or consider. Direct blood doping. This is to increase athletic performance. Okay, this is kind of like the whole Lance Armstrong cycling situation. If you have more red blood cells that you're carrying, you can carry more oxygen and you perform better athletically. This is why that they train all of our Olympic athletes here in Colorado with me, right, at altitude. So we make more red cells, we carry more oxygen, we're more athletically able to compete. They're creating that by blood doping between horses. Some other things they're doing, just contamination, blood contamination of multi-dose drug vials. So if you double dip into a bottle of bute or Banamine or ACE or whatever, you'll get blood contamination in that multi-dose drug vial. And every time you draw out of it from that point forward, every other horse you inject, it's like Russian roulette, right? You've got virus or pathogen in that bottle now. And finally, they'll move imported blood or plasma products from other countries that are illegal. So US has its own system where we label and regulate blood and plasma products. These are products that people are bringing in from other countries. They're coming out of horses that are infected and they're going into our horses here that make them infected. If you ever have a chance to look at these race videos online, I encourage you to do it. You will immediately see that there are no rules for horse or rider safety. Okay, in bush tracking. You're going to see all horses medicated on race day, performance enhancing drugs constantly, bad racing surfaces, caustic substances applied to make the horse run faster. You all would be very versed in seeing on the videos in the warm up, you'll see lame horses. They're going to run them full out on that lameness. No joke. Electronic shock devices, you will see it. Excessive whipping, you guys will pick it up immediately. And I can tell you that narcotics are administered to horses immediately before they load them into the gate. And the horse's reaction to that administration of drugs is usually visually identifiable. They go pretty well nuts after they get their shot. And frequent catastrophic breakdown. The crash videos are very popular. They don't hide them. They don't take them down. They're present online. You will see them in the videos. If you have an interest in this topic about bush tracking, I'd love for you to read this piece by Gus Garcia Roberts. It was in the Washington Post in August of 2022. Fantastic article that talks about all aspects of bush track racing and what we're learning about what's going on at these particular sites. I want to shift gears just a little bit because the bush track piece is one of the places where we get lots and lots of Pyro and EIA the last few years. But I also want to talk about these smuggled horses from Mexico that I mentioned. Saddle horses from Mexico are very popular. They're very well broke. They usually come in flashy colors. They're super cute, like this little pinto guy here, right? Looks like a great kid's horse, 4-H horse, rope horses. Again, they're broke. And we, as you know, in the US are looking for well-broke rideable saddle horses all over the country. We pay premiums for it. And the Mexicans know that. They sell them here, but they do not officially present them for import where we can test them for EIA and pyroplasmosis. They are just smuggling them across in groups and they have buyers for them. So high prevalence of both diseases, as I said, these cats fetch really good prices.
I'm not sure whose voice is on that, but let me see if we can mute them. There we go.
Okay, thank you so much. So here's just some examples of just the past few years. You know, I always try to give you guys pictures of the actual infected horses that we find, because that tells you a lot about the type of horse that we're seeing. So my EIA positive saddle horses that are smuggled, they're super cute. Like I said, these Palominos, you know, they're fit, they look well conditioned, they're broke to ride. This Palomino in the upper left and this little brown guy in the lower right were dual infected with both EIA and piroplasmosis. Okay, so that's coming directly from Mexico. And these were found in the hands of buyers that paid great money for these in the United States. This is another category that I think might shock you. And I am in discussions and have been for a couple years with the U.S. Equestrian Federation over this topic specifically. Because I told you about 80% of the world has piroplasmosis, we routinely have horses from piro-endemic countries that cannot get to the US because they can't pass our import test to get in. And these are still very high performing, very expensive sport horses that are piro-positive and they can't get in. And so what they're doing is they're sending them instead to Mexico and they're smuggling them across. Very, very high level horses. The three on your right here are all USEF competitors. We found them positive while they were competing actively in USEF events. This little gray guy down here at the bottom, this was one of our Tokyo Paralympic horses. Shockingly, we found him piro positive before he left the country to go to the Tokyo Games. We were testing him for export to make sure we could get him back, and they found him piro positive. We got him to the games. He went, he had a great games. He did very, very well in dressage, but he's stuck in Germany now. He cannot come home. He cannot pass our import test. So they're trying to treat him and clear him there so that they can get him home. But it takes a while for our horses, once we treat them, for them to lose all of that historic antibody and pass our import test. So he's kind of stuck right now. We also find a lot of these Andalusians, Lusitanos, Frisians, that are from endemic countries like Belgium, Costa Rica, Mexico. And again, we find them here smuggled in. They had buyers in the US. They sold sometimes for 6 figures and they got them here, but they smuggled them. So this is kind of the future of, you know, if you think the only problem is bush track racing and that sort of thing, it's really not. For Piro, we've got this issue too in this very high level sport horse, or, you know, fancy, you know, dancing horse, other types of sport horses. So I've listed here what countries these came from. You know, they come from all over. But this is a high risk for us. And you guys know that our border control issues, they're smuggling humans, drugs, guns, and horses, right? So we're right in there with how can this be stopped? We're the last of the line, you guys, because the drugs and the guns and the human smuggling is going to be way more important to other agencies in the United States, state and federal agencies, than this issue. So we're doing our best, but honestly, I don't have a way to shut this down. So just to kind of regroup and give you just a final summary, this is kind of what all is going on. We've got illegal movement of horses from Piro and EIA endemic regions, right, coming at us, usually from the south. We've got that illegal movement of contaminated blood or plasma or biologic products. That is coming in and going into horses and causing disease. That bush track issue is not going to go away. We do not have a way to solve that right now. Many, many different state and federal agencies have to be involved to solve that. Lots of criminal activity. As a veterinarian, I don't have a gun. I don't have a badge, right? So me dealing with the disease does very little to deal with the rest of the criminality involved in bush tracking. That's something that we have to tackle as an industry. We need more surveillance testing in these high-risk populations that I'm talking about. We need to find these very quickly and deal with them however we can so that we don't risk continuing to transmit these diseases. I'm very worried about the future of potential tick-borne transmission of Piro. You know, we had that ranch we had to eradicate that disease from. This is a tough one. We don't want to become an endemic country. This would be very impactful to our industry if we had to export test every single horse that left, right? That's a lot of money. And I'm worried about the potential for movement of Piro and EIA into other sectors of our population. If you have quarter horse racehorses, they have a very short lifespan for as they do that activity, right? They're still athletes when they're done racing, but they move into one of our other sectors. They become barrel horses, rope horses, riding horses. And as they move, they take that disease with them. And I kind of lose that ability to do surveillance testing in those other populations. So there's a huge risk to the rest of our industry from how these horses move out of that sector and into the rest. So I know that was a really quick, like, flyby on this topic. This is my contact information. I'd be happy to talk to any of you anytime if you have more questions or concerns, but I'll pass it back and just see if there's anything I can address today.
Angela, this is Nancy Edwards up in Wisconsin. You know, we have to test for EIA every year. Is there any test for that EP that's required if on a regular basis? I mean,
not in general, only if you have quarter horse racehorses, Nancy, and only in those about 10 states to enter sanctioned racetracks. So generally, you know, this is a problem, right? That's kind of why I'm bringing it to your attention. We've got some high risk horses there. If you're a sport horse person and your horse was imported, but you don't actually know how it got here, I would test that for Puro. You really need to know what the status is of your horse in that population. And certainly if you're ever getting a former quarter horse racehorse, current or former quarter horse racehorse, to move into another athletic endeavor, those need to be Puro tested. That I'm recommending that to all veterinarians as part of their pre-purchase examination, so that we protect the rest of our population as those move into other sectors. But yeah, no requirements for it unless you're sanctioned quarter horse racing.
okay. Thanks.
Angela, Angela, this is Bill Skebby.
Hi, Bill.
How are you?
I'm well.
Good to see you. Are the Canadian rules just as stringent as they used to be?
For import or for movement? What are you talking about, Bill?
For movement, because years ago, when we used to do Arabians quite a bit,
Oh yeah.
somehow they used to stay in quarantine up in Canada for a long period of time, trying to eradicate the pyro in their bloodstream. And then the second part of my question is, are foals carriers as well, especially 6 months and 6 months and younger?
Okay, so let's start with the foals. The foals up to age 6 months are going to show the exact same antibody profile as their dam. So we have foals, if they're born to a Puro or EIA positive mare, they're going to show positive. They may not be infected. So we wait and test those foals born to positive mares until after we wean them, several months after we wean them. And then they're going to show us whether or not they were infected or they were just showing their maternal antibody profile. Okay, so we have to be a little careful with testing foals, but we know how to do it. On your Canada question, the Canadians do still have some EP test requirements for horses moving from Texas and New Mexico that are very, very old requirements from 2010. So if you're moving horses to Canada from Texas or New Mexico, you're probably going to be required to have an EIA test, a Puro test to get there. So that's stuff that we haven't been able to disband. There's not a good reason for it because our risk is kind of everywhere. You saw, we're finding them everywhere. It's not just New Mexico, Texas problem, right? So that's a weird trade little obstacle to get through there, but they're not holding them under quarantine from us. If they have a test requirement from a certain state, you just test before you go and you can go in normally. And then the normal EIA test back and forth, 180 days is your test is good for 180 days going either direction for Canada. So it's not too bad, again, unless you're coming from one of those states where they've got some restrictions that are just really old and I haven't been able to repeal them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else have questions?
This is Brittany from Michigan.
Hi, Brittany.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, this was really interesting. My daughter's, she's 13, so we're getting into this whole sport horse competition, but she was up in Traverse City, which is the Great Lakes Equestrian Festival, and her coaches are regulars down at the World Equestrian Center in Florida and Ohio. And as we were looking for a new horse for her this year, you know, we were looking all over the place. We were Florida, Ohio, Canada, so we're in Michigan, right at the border state. So, you know, as far as they do a really good job as far as their, sorry, I have a dog that wants to go outside real quick. But as far as like writing a contract, because our coaches follow the Florida contract rules, but we don't really have those in Michigan. And so I'm just wondering, as far as when you are purchasing a horse and putting it in the contract, what type of language would you use around that when securing that with the veterinarian?
Yeah, I would work with your veterinarian who's doing your pre-purchase. And really the point you want to bring to your veterinarian is, look, for sport horses, and you can tell them, we've published stuff online on the USDA website about the EP and sport horses issue. So we have some things that they can reference that, hey, we're telling people this is a new problem. But you're welcome to send them to me if you want. But honestly, we just want to make sure that before you buy, you are EIA and piroplasmosis negative. Okay, that should be part of your pre-purchase exam. In addition to everything you're doing for your radiographs and your lameness exams, all of that, this should just be a normal part of that to protect you. And as long as you do that, these are cheap tests, you guys. They're like, I mean, if the Piro test is $17 for T-Equi, okay? So, these are things that we should be doing. We need to help our veterinary community realize that these are high-risk groups now. That's new. From when they came out of vet school, that's a new thing, right? So that's sort of the communication you have to have. If you need it in your contract or not, I'm not sure, because your pre-purchase exam, obviously you have first right of refusal for anything that gets found on your pre-purchase that you don't like or that you don't think is appropriate. So you might not even need language in there. You might just need the final results from that pre-purchase to say, okay, this horse disease-wise is safe for me to purchase. And then the rest of your contract language can be normal. So consider that.
So just as a follow-up, as far as raising awareness, would that be primarily with the veterinarians and then our member base? We have a huge trail quarter horse section within Michigan. So, I think about them, but then also, communicating with veterinarians on a whole. What literature do you have that we could send out to them specifically from that's, sanctioned and looks, like a good handout, I guess, for education?
So I'm going to put in, and I'm not really good at multitasking, but when we move to the next speaker, I'm going to put in the chat for you guys links to those two blurbs I'm talking about. One of them is a blurb we posted on the USDA website that makes people aware that we're finding problems of EIA and Piro and quarter horse racehorses, right? So that gets people aware. If you're current or former quarter horse race and you're buying it, you're going to bring it in, test for this stuff, right? And then I've got another little blurb we put out for Piro and sport horses. So I'm going to put both of those links in the chat. And then you can also always go to our equine health page on USDA, and we have each disease represented there and fact sheets on each individual disease that we have posted on the equine health page. But I'm going to send you those two specific blurbs about these topics in the chat here in just a minute, and you're welcome to share those. Those are publicly posted warnings to our vets, our owners, everything. And I'm always working through AAEP, the American Association of Equine Practitioners, to keep this front and center so that our equine practitioners know we have new risks, right? And they need to protect their clients.
Thank you.
Angela, I may also add for Brittany that it's important that we remind horse owners, because they get really excited when they find these horses and they want to take them home.
I know.
Do not you might want to suggest to your people, don't be as excited and don't bring these horses home, because you won't find those people to return that horse.
I know. And then they're stuck with it. And if I find the disease
stuck
in
with
that horse, if I find the disease in that horse, wow, now it's their problem, right? And they did not intend for that to happen. So great point, Bill.
Because we find this, people will call me and say, hey, we found this horse. Yeah, fine, leave it where it's at and get all your ducks in order, because even though you've signed a contract saying that it's clear and safe, be sure that that exam is gone through the USDA and that you're sure about what people are bringing home, because it happens very quickly with the excitement on finally finding that right horse for your child.
Yeah, that's tough. Great comments, Bill. I will tell you, we have a lot of people who know their horse was born in another country, right? I have his papers from Spain. I have his passport. He's from Belgium. Look, but they have no idea how that horse got here. And if that horse got smuggled across at Mexico instead of flying in to a USDA animal import center and being tested, these folks have no idea. And it's not their fault, okay? It's not their fault. But we've really got to get this message out that people do not understand the border with Mexico and the porosity of that, the holes all throughout. The horses are coming across in groups, rampant smuggling. This is a daily thing for me. And I find them positive for one of these diseases over here and then trace back and figure out how they brought it in. So I've put in the chat 2 links for you. One is on that pyroplasmosis in sport horses issue, and the other is on just a little blurb on EIA pyro and quarter horse race horses. Share that rampantly and send people to the USDA equine health page. All the fact sheets and things are there on the main page.
That's excellent. I have 2, maybe 3-part question real quick as maybe a segue to the next presentation. So first part, to Bill's point, I mean, I hear it in Kansas that we have people that are buying horses at even sale barns and
Yes.
finding out that there's problems. There's no paper trail, etc. And
Yes.
and I've got an individual that's been stung probably 3 times, and you think by now either you get really smart or you wonder what the problem is. And you know, so that it gets into that whole buyer beware. But the pre-purchase exam is a very good method to hopefully cut that off and not going through sale barns. And I hate to dismiss sale barns because it's another valuable tool in, you know, the whole transaction and economy, but it definitely there is a problem there. And then to the bush track racing piece, it amazes me that it is very prevalent, and yet even authorities are somewhat turning a blind eye to the presence of it, and that's something that hopefully
Really difficult. Yeah,
Yeah,
very difficult problem. So lots of different criminal enterprises happening around the bush tracks that involves FBI, DEA, DHS, ICE, USDA. I mean, we've all got to learn how to come together and actually tackle these issues together. It can't be one or the other of us because nobody has enough authorities to do it all. So really challenging. I hope in the future we find ways to deal with this, but it's a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. And then, okay, as we, and I so greatly appreciate your time and your expertise. This is just wonderful. It just makes me think about something that Julie's probably going to bring up here shortly in her updates with American Horse Council is the Horse Protection Act. Does that look at only lameness welfare type issues, or is there a component of this that plays into that?
We've not been able to make the bush track situation fit under the Horse Protection Act. Horse Protection Act is really specific to our gated horses, right? And soaring of gated horses. So that's really, it's kind of a misnomer, right? Because it sounds like it should work across, but it doesn't. Yeah.
Okay, well, again, thank you so much for your time. And I think everybody's had a chance to see your contact information, and you may get a lot of follow-up questions from this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, next
Are we
up,
allowed to comment on one more thing? Or do you need to move on?
oh, go right ahead. Go
Okay, hey, this is Cynthia Smith. I'm with Nebraska. Racing has been really small for the past 20 years since, since Exarban stopped. The thoroughbreds have been racing, but we have one quarter horse track still, which is what we're doing here, and that's starting to gear up. Because gaming passed in 2020. Just wanted to quickly say that I understand, I worked as a steward and a safety steward and worked with investigators in New Mexico and different states all the way to Delaware, Iowa. But one of the things that I've heard and from investigators and police forces that some bush tracks are allowed to get away with being considered sanctioned or regulated in a sense because they have security there to monitor whether there is betting going on or not. And just because they have security there, they're okay to do it. But really, the verbiage needs to, whatever sanctioned means, it needs to specifically say that the betting is monitored through some kind of tote machine or however that is. And there's testing going on, things like that, because just because they're allowed to have security there that oversees whether there's betting going on or not, which it is going on, they're allowed to host the races. It doesn't make sense, but that's how they're getting away with it, at least in New Mexico. and perhaps other places. The other thing is, so we're racing, Association of Racing Commissioners International is the kind of the regulated, organized body that oversees quarter horses and does the model rules for quarter horses. And so basically where our rules are, sometimes it comes down to the track specific itself that has the rules that horses can't get through the gates unless they have Coggins or the whatever testing, the Piros, however. But if there's more tests that need to be added, perhaps that's that conversation could happen with the Association of Racing Commissioners International to put a rule in place for quarter horses to be able to come to the tracks, and that testing, an added test has to be satisfied in order for those horses to come to the tracks.
It's a great suggestion, Cynthia. I tried that in 2010. So I'm the person who got our Piro testing in place at the sanctioned racetracks where we have it in 2010 to present. And I've routinely had to go back when they've disbanded it and get it put back. When I've tried to approach more organizations across states, I have been unsuccessful historically in getting across state rules. I have to go to individual tracks or I have to go to racing commissions. So great suggestion. If the thoughts on that have changed, I'd love to revisit that. But right now I'm having to do it this way because that's what's been successful, but it's definitely not complete.
Well, and perhaps that's another, I just came from our Quarter Horse Association racing committee. We had our kind of biannual meeting, and we will have conference that is in Nevada, in Las Vegas in March. And this is something that we would definitely be open to. We want to save our industry, right? So that would definitely be a place that we could talk about it, and then we can present to ARCI. So anyway, just food for thought. Or the symposium. We do have the symposium, the racing symposium in Arizona every year in Tucson. So just thoughts. And for biosecurity for our track, I want to make sure we're rigorous about that, because tracks are allowed to have house rules or rules for their specific track, private property. So I really want to be, if there's a suggestion for that verbiage and to put that in place, I'd super appreciate that.
Thanks so much, Cynthia. And I'm happy to help with any of those. I need y'all's help to move these things forward, right? Because I'm running around chasing the disease horses, right? That's my job in all 50 states. So trying to help you guys, and we work collectively to try to get some new things in place. I'm absolutely willing to do that. Please let me know where you can plug me in to help you. But I also need more help. I'm one human and I've been doing this for 15 years. You can see I've not made much progress by myself. Right? Okay.
I think you're talking to a good group here, because we do have a pipeline that we can share things out, and particularly as we're starting to get racing back in Kansas, which Cynthia, are you at Columbus?
No, I am with Hastings Exposition and Racing.
Okay.
Ogallala. Yeah, we're going to Ogallala. We just got all that. We're just waiting to break ground, get the corn off. We just got our zoning and everything cleared. So, and we're really trying to make a circuit, another track in northern Nebraska. So it's really gearing up. We're excited. We're the only quarter horse track here. And yes, we support all racing, because all racing supports, we help each other. When we're racing, then we're all racing, and we're excited for, hopefully Kansas can get something going. But for sure, we want to make sure that horses that are traveling, that nothing, gets passed along. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pelzel McCluskey, and Cynthia.
Thanks,
be
guys.
sure to get me your contact information so we can visit again further, because I think there will be an opportunity for collaborating. So
thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. That was a lot of great information. And I think, yeah, it is up to us to kind of share that information forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie Broadway with American Horse Council updates and Bridget Shea with governmental updates. So whichever one of you wants to take it off.
I think my first question for you is, my clock says it is been an hour. How long do we have?
Oh my goodness.
I can talk all day long about the Horse Protection Act, and Bridget can talk all day long about where we are with legislative issues.
Well, okay. I'm good with whatever time. And if we want to continue, is there anyone here that is short on time? This is a lot of great information. I am recording it, and so we can share it out after we're done. It's just a matter of if somebody's wanting to ask questions in the midst of it. So I say If you got 20 minutes worth of updates, that would be great.
So we are working on a lot of things at the American Horse Council in Washington. Bridget's going to talk about generally legislative things, but I can honestly say since the Horse Protection Act revisions, which go into effect February the 1st of 2025, have been announced, I exclusively 24/7, 7 days a week seem to be talking about the Horse Protection Act because everybody's quite concerned about this. So first, I'm going to give you a little background so you understand how we got where we are, and then I want to talk a little bit about the new regulations. So the Horse Protection Act came into law in 1970. It authorized the USDA APHIS to ensure the health and well-being of U.S. horses by eliminating the practice of soring. As Dr. Pelzel McCluskey said, predominantly it was going after gaited horses because they had a history of soring. But you need to know that the rules have always applied to all equine breeds and disciplines to protect from abusive practices and promote humane care. They just haven't been applied as much to non-gaited horses as what we see in these new regulations. Over the years, these regulations have been revised based on new scientific data, feedback from the industry on different methodologies for inspection and detection of soring. And the new rules that are going to go into effect were recently based on the National Academy of Sciences and input from organizations like AAEP and stakeholders. The proposed regulations were made available to the public in 2023. The American Horse Council did a huge push asking people to provide comments. Almost 10,000 comments were received by USDA, including numerous comments from us and AAEP. And after reviewing all those comments and responding to them, they issued these new regulations in May of 2024. Now, I'm going to be really honest and say, number one, be patient. We appreciate your understanding. Allow some grace because we don't have all the answers to all of this. It's just come out. We have been working really closely with USDA staff to try to understand all the nuances of the new regulations. But the main things that I want to highlight for you is that this act covers horse shows, horse exhibitions, horse sales, or auctions. And they wanted to be clear this time that horse show means any public display of any horse, donkey, mule, any equid in a competition setting, except where speed is the prime factor. It also excludes rodeos and parades and trail rides. So those are outside of the Horse Protection Act. We've had a lot of people ask us, oh, where speed is the primary factor. Well, does that eliminate barrel racing? Does that eliminate reining? Anybody that's on a time kind of clock? And the answer we have received back from them is no, that does not exclude them, because any competition where there is a combination of any kind of judging or penalty or fault along with speed means that you're still covered under the Horse Protection Act. They are not excluded because it is where speed is the prime factor. That's the conclusion that they've reached. It also means that state fairs, 4-H shows, intercollegiate shows, any kind of horse shows are all going to fall under this. It also says that a horse exhibition means public display of any horse, donkey, mule, whatever equid, singly or in groups, but are not competing, fall under this act. So this is a much broader umbrella than what we had previously seen. I have had some people say to me, oh, this sounds like government overreach, or wow, they really broaden this. And what they have responded to us and said is, it was not our intention to, quote, broaden this as much as to clarify what's included and what's not included. Now, the real key is we put out a special bulletin a couple of weeks ago to get this on people's radar. We're going to do a series of bulletins. We're also going to do a town hall meeting sometime in the next few months. We're getting all that outlined. But the first thing we wanted to flag is that the new rule requires that all event management, regardless of breed or discipline, that fall under the Horse Protection Act are required to provide notice to USDA at least 30 days prior to holding their event. Now, everybody says, well, what does that mean? Is there a form? Is there a portal? What do I submit? How does it all work? Those are questions we still don't have all the answers to. We did ask them, for example, if your event is sanctioned by a body, AQHA sanctions AQHA events. Can AQHA submit on behalf of all of those shows instead of each individual show having to submit? And what we've heard tentatively is yes. So we're getting some feedback about that. So that's the first thing, is there has to be a notice sent to them. Somebody has asked me, what happens when you submit? Where does the information go? How's it used? Don't have the answer to that question yet either. So now you've notified them that you're holding an event. There are two ways that a show can be selected for inspection. They could have a very specific type of show, like a Tennessee Walking Horse show, which has had a history of soaring, that they're targeting. So they will select that show because of the type of horses that are going to go there. They may also randomly select any horse show. So I'm going to pick on Justine for the sake of argument and say she submitted a horse show and suddenly her name gets pulled out of a hat and they say, okay, they are not going to call you and tell you they're coming. They are going to show up at your show. They're going to come to the show office. They are going to identify themselves with an official badge and a shield. They have to have a shield like a police officer would. They're going to tell you that they're on the premise and they are going to have a conversation with you about what their intentions are while they're there. They may go to some shows and they may simply observe and walk around and just see what they see. Walk through the barns. They may watch the warm-up ring. They may watch some of the show, and they're just taking it all in. We encourage show managers, when you have your exhibitor meeting, to go over this with your exhibitors so they are not surprised if they see someone who's observing all of this. They need to be polite, cordial, respectful, and answer questions. These inspectors may not be familiar with your specific breed, so they might not even understand what you're doing. Okay, so we want to be as educational as we can be about this. The other option is they may come to the show manager and say, we are here to inspect. And what that means is the show manager has to read the rules. They have to understand they're required to set up an inspection area that has to be approved by the inspector. And then they have a whole process for how they identify horses they're going to bring in to inspect. There's a whole process about who can accompany the horses and all the things that go along with the actual inspection. Now, again, what they are looking for is soaring, okay? And that means they're predominantly looking at the limbs of the horse. So they're looking at the legs, they're looking at the feet, they're looking for any signs of something caustic that may have been applied or something that might have resulted in the horse being soared. A lot of breeds don't have any reason to soar because they don't need to enhance the gait of the horse. So they most likely will not find anything. But can the inspector ask you to take the tack off the horse? He can look at the entirety of the horse. He may see something that causes a concern. We had a case where recently they went to a horse show. It was a saddlebred show. There was a horse that had clipped the back of its front foot with its rear leg, just kind of stepped on itself, and it left a little raw mark there. And the inspector pointed it out and said, I've got a concern. This does not look to me as if it was intentional soaring, but this looks like an issue. And we would encourage the exhibitor not to show this horse. But that's not like you've been written up for a violation or a disqualification. That's just the inspector's comments that are there. They're looking for what is contributing to soaring. That's what they are telling us. Doesn't mean that some inspectors might not be a little overzealous. That's my best word for it. And see something that they think, that looks like an issue that could be an attempt to inflict soaring. We just don't know what that might look like. So that's a little bit about the Horse Protection Act as we see it coming. We are meeting, feels like weekly, with USDA staff to try to understand the rules, and we'll be putting out some more information about how all this works. I've got a whole bulletin ready to go to exhibitors to explain to them what the process is, how they need to conduct themselves, and all the things that go along with that. So lots and lots of things. right now, Bridget, if you'll unmute yourself and you can add to this, but I'm up to 8 pages of questions that we have sent to USDA. And as we get them answered, there'll be more bulletins coming from us saying, okay, here's what we've heard. Here's what we've learned about all this. We know this is a bit unsettling for people. Feels like a lot of new things coming at you, and horse people don't like change. So that's why I started off by saying, be patient, have some grace, have some understanding. We'll all navigate through this. There are, in my estimation, 50,000 horse shows in the US every year. So the USDA's got a lot of data that they're going to have to process. To our knowledge, they have not received any additional funding or any additional manpower or resources. And historically, they have inspected something like 50 shows a year. So if they don't have more funding and they don't have more manpower, they're probably not going to go to a whole lot more shows. But might they go to some different shows? Yes, they very well may. Like I said, they've been to 2 saddlebred shows already this year. So we know that they are randomly selecting some shows. It's just a matter of drawing them out of a hat and doing those inspections in those places. I've tried to say to a lot of the breeds and disciplines that I've spoken with, you have no reason to sore your horse in that particular breed. They're going to come, they might inspect, they're not going to find anything. My guess is they'll go away. They don't have the time and resources, to kind of continue to examine in a breed where they're not finding any evidence of soring at all. But the unknown is what's keeping everybody awake at night right now on the Horse Protection Act. Bridget, you want to add anything to that?
I would add that against this rollout of I think Julie would be the first to say, a complicated regulation with lots of nuances. There are at least one lawsuit, there'll be more. So that's going to muddy the waters. It's going to maybe slow down responses from USDA as they determine what they can answer in good faith and what they cannot disclose because of lawsuits. So it is complicating an already complicated regulation. And I mean, I will say Julie and Emily are pushing because we know that we are on the cusp of horse show season, and people are trying to get organized, and this is a big question mark out there for them. So
yeah. So a couple of quick things that I have been asked that, again, don't know the answer to. What happens if you don't notify them? What's the penalty? We don't know the answer to that one yet. We know that horse shows have a choice. They could apply to get what's called a DMO from USDA, or they can hire a horse protection inspector, an HPI. Now, HPI comes at the show's expense. If you get lucky and there are enough VMOs, you might can get a VMO that is paid for by USDA. We don't know how many there are of those. So you have those 2 choices. Your third choice is you don't hire anybody. You just take your chances. Now, the last part says if you don't hire an inspector or VMO to come, and they show up and they inspect and they find a horse who is sored, then the show organizer has some liability. And the question is, well, what's that mean? And we're getting the answer to that question because we don't really understand what that means when we say now Justine's liable. Okay. So lots and lots of questions that we're still getting answers to and still working our way through on all of this. Emily, do you want to add anything since I see you sitting out there?
No, I think that covers most of it. I think the biggest thing that's important to just keep reiterating is there's a lot of questions we're waiting on them to answer.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to pause there. I see a hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, Julie, is this something that insurance companies will add in their insurance policies in order for them to write them? because I think this is a terrible risk that people will be taking.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, Bill, but that would seem logical to me. But you know how insurance companies like to avoid risk. So that looks like that could be something that you might be asked in your next insurance audit.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, and I think you answered the question that was on my mind before, and that was, is USDA planning on hiring more inspectors? But you've said that it would be up to the show managers to provide that payment towards individuals, and so they may train up and contract with, but then it would be up to the show manager to hire somebody or contract somebody for that show, and so the expense falls on the show, which again, so many of our smaller shows are already feeling the pain point of rising costs of venues and judges and so forth. So that's just one more damper on the industry.
Yeah. Now, one thing that we did learn this week that, and Bridget, feel free to jump in, is I had told someone, you know, they're going to target your show or they're going to randomly select your show. And it says in the regulations that the average individual cannot detect soaring. It has to be someone who's trained to detect soaring. But it doesn't mean that someone can't file a complaint with USDA. There is a mechanism. So if somebody has been to one of your expos or they've been to some event that you guys have put on and they want to file a complaint, they can. Doesn't mean USDA will take that complaint and think it's legitimate and thus come and inspect. But it does kind of put you on the radar screen a little bit more. So Bridget, you want to add anything to that? Because that was a new twist this week. It was like the naked eye, somebody can just randomly file a complaint.
Yeah, I mean, USDA has this in place for the Animal Welfare Act, which addresses primarily animals in lab. So it's a combination for whistleblowers. A horse event is different. So we hope that it's used by good faith and not means to make mischief. But quite frankly, it's also going to take a toll on a already strapped USDA staff to go through these complaints, legitimate or not. So again, it's going to be a bumpy ride rolling this out.
Yeah, yeah. So if you have questions, feel free to drop me an email. You guys know how to get in touch with me. jbroadway@horsecouncil.org. And we'll add them to our list and we'll try to get them, get answers for you on them. Or it may be a question that you're thinking that somebody else has already thought of and it's already on my list, so I can tell you if we've gotten something. I have another meeting with them tomorrow, and there have been some questions. Don't believe everything you read on social media. We have had a couple of people who have gone on social media. They have cherry picked a few little nuances in the thing, and they're trying to, in my opinion, they're kind of getting people worked up and anxious about this. And not all of what they're hypothesizing is accurate. They're kind of speculating on some things, so be careful about that. And be mindful. What we're trying to do is get the facts so we can tell you exactly how this is all going to. So it's going slower than we'd like, but we're dogging them like crazy these days.
Greatly appreciate you staying on top of that. I know I've shared with some of our Kansas show folks that like our breed associations are following the national, rules, and the national rules have the welfare coding put into that. So there are best practices already on AQHA and APHA that can be used and implemented, that they should already be implemented. And so I feel like they're safe, and not to worry about it at this point. So
and also one thing I will raise: don't panic about shoeing regulations yet. There are some very specific shoeing regulations that are specific to those gated breeds, but there are some other shoeing rules that are in there that say apply to all breeds. And we've got some people who have gotten really just sort of stressed about that. We are working with the American Farriers Association to try to navigate through all that. So there'll be some more details to come about that. They are predominantly interested in eliminating, for the Tennessee walking horses, that big, thick stack that they use. They want to eliminate soaring. action devices, caustic chemicals on their limbs, anything that could be used to kind of accentuate that gait. That's where what they're really focusing on. So we've got a lot of folks really trying to get to all the nitty gritty details that we need to share with the non-gated breeds that are out there. So, and Bridget, you got any legislative updates you want to share?
I'll be fast because I know the time's running out, and I'm going to start with the horse, the PAST Act, because it ties into the Horse Protection Act. Right now in the Senate and the House, they have the critical mass to pass the PAST Act. And it is very doubtful it's going to move this session because time is running out, and we've been told by members in both the House and the Senate they would like to see how their regulation goes into effect and if that's all they need. So right now, we don't expect any kind of movement on the PASS Act. And again, there's also the spectrum of litigation that is slowing everything down. Congress is coming back after the elections on November 12th, and they have about until December 20th to pass a lot of legislation. And so they have time constraints. And in case you haven't noticed, we have an election coming up in about a week. So everything is being seen through that election prism. And I'm going to use a farm bill as an example. The farm bill as it stands right now has been passed out of the House committee. It has not gone to the floor of the House. The Senate hasn't even released language. And we saw in the August recess, and then when Congress came back for that short work period before they adjourned again for the election season, the crop production associations rolled into town, rolled into district offices with their bankers and their finance folks to just impress upon members of Congress how important it was, because they are the sector of agriculture that are going to be the most affected if the farm bill is merely extended and a new one doesn't go in place, because it involves insurance and payments. What we think is going to happen is they're going to come back from the elections, and if the Senate switches hands, there's going to be no incentive for the Senate to do anything. The Republicans are going to want to wait and write their own farm bill, and the House is anybody's guess. But I think there's going to be an extension. I don't think they're going to get a farm bill kicked out the door. And the grassroots activity has died down a little bit. We'll see what happens. I mean, it's certainly possible, but it's unlikely. Also on their agenda, let me just back up. And just to remind everyone, the equine industry has several measures in the House bill that we like and we want to see move forward. And that includes establishing a commission to evaluate the statistical service of USDA. I mean, we all know that equines are not being captured in an accurate, comprehensive manner. And this commission that is being proposed to stand up, we want to get a seat on it so we can push for our census. So that's something we're looking at. The House version has programs in there to increase the number of veterinarians through grant programs and loans, especially in rural areas. So that's something we want. And there's the creation of centers of excellence, which are going to be attached to various universities. And there's also a provision in there for one exclusive to equines. There's lots of politics involved in this particular proposal, so we see how it plays out, but we'll watch it and we will engage as appropriate. And of course, that we want full funding for the three-legged stool, which deals with disease preparedness, response programs, vaccines, and monitoring of foreign illnesses, much like what our earlier presentation had. In addition to this, Farm Bill, which would take up a big part of the limited time, Congress needs to do the defense bill. They need to do disaster relief funding. Both the Small Business Administration, the Federal Management, Federal Emergency Management Association are running out of money and they need to be refunded. We also have a couple equine related provisions waiting for appropriations, and that includes the Horse Protection Act. The House passed their budget and they cut it. And so we're hoping the Senate will prevail because whether you like the regulation or not, an unfunded regulation, a regulation that does not have adequate funding is going to get rolled out in a very disruptive manner. So it's better that they have the resources they need and it should go smoother. And we also have been working on guest worker visas because there's been great employment shortages on racetracks, farms, ranches. All of that's dead in the water. It's not going to be addressed in the remaining month of session. We continue to work with a workforce coalition to try to get ready for next year, try to get some revisions made so that these programs are streamlined and accessible and affordable by small ranchers and farmers. And finally, next year is going to be tax bill time. The major work is going to be done on revamping the Trump administration's tax rules on appreciation, tax rates, the horse racing bills may be folded into it at some point. So we're already working with a coalition to try to assess what we want in the new tax bill. There'll be a fair amount of discussion on the estate tax. So at some point early in the year, we'll probably be coming out to you, Justine, to send out a survey of a wish list. It won't address property taxes, but other aspects of your businesses, LLCs, all of that. So it's going to be a busy year next year, and this year, fingers crossed, we won't have that budget countdown to whether or not the government needs to be shut down. And hopefully they'll come back and at least get the appropriations done. I don't think the farm bill is going to be addressed. So that's just a quick little rundown of where we are.
Is this an appropriate time to put in a plug for the Colt Pack, maybe?
No, because I don't have the required paperwork for people to sign. Just so you know, the Colt Pack is the American Horse Council's political action committee, and we are discussing with our board, but what it should look like in the future. So you'll hear more about that the first of the year, because even though it's important to be engaged, hopefully with political contributions before an election, after this election, half of the country is going to be irritated and upset. So that will also generate the funding. But right now we're gonna soldier through with our wish list by relying on grassroots support from the state councils. So we thank you for your help.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Julie. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up while you have the floor? Either one? No,
Emily had to drop off because she had another meeting, but you will certainly be hearing from us shortly about the results of our recent fly spray survey, where we are with the conversation around pyrethins. Everybody's been interested in that. We've got a couple of other things that we're working on. Bridget and I take very seriously Dr. Pelzel McCluskey's concerns about unsanctioned racing. We are going to be speaking with we've been speaking to the state attorney generals. We've spoken to the National Sheriff's Association. We've been having a conversation with the Association of Prosecuting Attorneys.
Yes.
Yes. So we're going every angle we can get to try to see what we can move on that dime. So you'll be hearing some more about some of those things.
Okay. Very good, very good. Well, thank you so much for all of that. That's a lot of good information and good, bad, whatever, however you want to take it, right? A lot of things going on. So, okay, thanks so much. Kimberly Egan, are you on? I'm not sure if you're here. She had an appointment, but she was going to share with us regarding Maryland's Horse Forum if she had time. I'm not seeing her on here. I don't know. Julie, did you attend that horse forum?
Yeah, Bridget and I got an invitation to attend the Maryland Horse Forum. It was a day-long event where they had a number of different breakout rooms and a lot of great conversations. They have produced a final report, and I shared with Justine that I was hoping Kim might pass that on to you guys. I'll give her approval if she'll let me to send it, because Bridget and I both got a copy of it. And I thought it might be interesting for you guys to see what are some of the top challenges they've got in Maryland, what are some of the things they're talking about, and what their concerns are. Probably mirror some of the things in your own state. But it was a very interesting and worthwhile day. But it was open to anybody from the horse industry. So I know Bridget and I had conversations with this Jane Smith horse owner, down to Donna Jones, who's running a big multi-horse, training facility. I mean, just all kinds of people from the industry that showed up for the thing.
Okay, great. Pauline, I know you're on here. Oh, let's see, Brittany. Okay, I'll touch base with you later.
Yes, I'm
Pauline, go for it. You had something that you wanted to share.
I'm trying to get an idea of how many other state horse councils have an equine industry board. There's one that's been proposed through New York State Farm Bureau. So maybe if we could talk offline a little more about that, that would be great. We're also adding an administrative assistant part-time to help with a lot of our secretarial duties. And I'm just trying to find out from other horse councils how they fund some of their paid positions. And that's it. Thank you.
All right. So regarding the horse industry board, I know that Maryland has a horse industry board, and that's actually who had hosted that horse forum, I believe. And Bill, you have several different organizations. You're structured with different parts and pieces, and maybe we should share out how your annual meeting report, your minutes would help her with some of that. I don't know if you want to say anything now regarding that, or just follow up with Pauline later.
Yeah, Pauline, our organization here in Colorado, Horse Council came first. The second thing that came was an expo. And then the third thing that had was a legislative act that made a Colorado Horse Development Authority. So we are an act under the state legislature, which every year we have members of our board voted on by our ag commissioner. So it's a very nice structure, and it gives us a great link and relationship with the Department of Agriculture and the commissioner. And I'd be glad to share that process and what we went through. But I have found over the last 2 years, it has been extremely important that we have that direct link to the governor's office and to the Department of Agriculture.
Good, Bill. Thank you. We've been looking at ag and markets here as well. Thank you.
Please give me a call. If you don't have my number, I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah. Very good. All right. And I think, Julie, you had suggested I share something about the HHR machines. So racing is coming to Kansas, and that's going to be a huge economic boom for us. I think I shared with Debbie that we were kind of trying to get things going because Debbie has a good horse racing background there in West Virginia, right? And the HHR machines are different from a regular slot machine. We are unable to get funding back into our Horseman's Fund off the slot machines. We've tried over a number of years, but the HHR machines, historical horse racing machines, are actually considered pari-mutuel wagering. So they provide a new opportunity for a funding mechanism, because as pari-mutuel wagering, our state has a statute that says pari-mutuel wagering needs to be, some funds need to be put back into a Horseman's Fund to help with operation costs, to help with purse money and to help with the Kansas Breeders Program. And so that stimulation to the economy is going to revive live racing, sanctioned racing. We do have bush track racing in abundance here, and that's something that I would love to visit more on behind, you know, offline with anybody that's interested. Because that's been one of my questions to some of the horsemen is, do we see that as a direct competition? But I think that obviously the value of a clean race, et cetera, I believe that we'll still do okay with sanctioned racing. But getting back to HHR machines, we fought for years to get 3% of slot machines to be invested and directed towards Horseman Fund, because it was the horsemen who helped bring the casinos into the state, much to their chagrin, because it actually backfired on them. They looked at that as an opportunity to help fund those purses, and they did not have that opportunity in the end. And when they got mad and took their toys out of the sandbox, or basically gave up the slot machines that were at the tracks that we had, they'll never get those back. So, you know, it kind of dried up for a while. And then with this new infusion of potential, you know, electronic gaming that's actually considered pari-mutuel, we have a proviso right now that allows 3% of the revenue from that to be infused into the Horsemen's program once again. Now, the Historical Horse Racing Machines Casino will open in September of 2025. And the first $2 million out of that will be directed back to Kansas Racing and Gaming to cover their administrating fees. And then thereafter, that bucket will begin accumulating. We anticipate live racing to begin at Eureka Downs, our only remaining racetrack in Kansas and the oldest racetrack west of the Mississippi. It will hopefully begin in the spring of 2026. And we have a horsemen's meeting on Friday that we will dive into some more details of that with our Kansas Racing and Gaming, our Eureka Downs folks, and the horsemen among us. So it's an exciting, busy, crazy time, but the economic impact of the state would be would be fantastic. We look at our last economic survey was done in '96. We lost racing finally, like around 2010, and nobody wanted to report numbers after that because it was just so devastating when we lost live racing. People took their breeding businesses and moved to Oklahoma, or went up to, you know, they're taking their horses and their breeding programs up to Iowa. I don't know that too many have actually gone into Nebraska. There's a few. Some of our thoroughbred folks went to Nebraska, but a lot of them went to Prairie Meadows in Iowa. Most everybody's running either at Remington or Will Rogers Downs or Fair Meadows in Oklahoma. Some have gone to Louisiana. So this will be a great boom for us, and I'm happy to share what I learned along the way. And I'm looking forward to touching base with Cynthia afterwards and learning what they've got going on out at Ogallala. Because, you know, if we all work together and line the schedules up and make it work so that people can make the progression, and Bill, you know, Arapahoe, that's somebody that's probably a good model for us as far as the size and how they make it work for a mixed breed race, et cetera. So there's a lot of examples around us, and I look forward to kind of offline, you know, visiting in more detail so we can build on each other, because, you know, really, we've got to support the industry at large. And if we can learn from each other and you know, try to avoid the mistakes or try to make corrections where we can, it's just going to make us stronger across the US. So that's that. I think I've covered all of those updates, and now I'm going to turn the floor over to Bill, who is our Coalition of State Horse Councils treasurer, and he is going to share with us that we have made a change for the economic reasons to the coalition website. And also, he's been using AI for his meetings, and that's kind of a cool thing. Maybe you want to give us a tidbit of expertise there. So,
yeah, hello all. Good to see you all and hear you all. It's been a crazy summer, as Justina said. It's been an exciting summer to the extent that in the state of Colorado, a bill was passed that provides $200,000 worth of grant money to equine welfare ventures. And I'm very excited about it. And it is somewhat of a pilot program that's out of our Department of Agriculture, where they've developed a new animal welfare division. We worked very hard in legislation to keep that division not regulatory, but educational. And so we worked with the Department of Agriculture. We went to various committee sessions prior to the votes in May, but we got it. And we got it the way we wanted it. We didn't want another organization regulating our equine industry. And we said, give us a chance as an industry, and we will use education to educate people about equine, because most of our problems with welfare is an educational problem. So we got it. Now we've got to write the grant, and I'm in the middle of it. I put up my board behind me so that you couldn't see the other desk behind me, which is full of paper, and my whiteboards look a mess, so I was embarrassed. So we had our annual meeting. We had our annual meeting last Thursday night, where I tried something very unusual. I used my Zoom meeting format and used the AI component of it, which is, I forgot to tell you this, Justine, it's part of your program anyway. So you recording it, I think you'll be able to do what I did. But our meeting ended at like 9:03, and by 9:07, I had my complete set of minutes written for me by Zoom AI. So those of you that are having meetings by Zoom, take a look at this, because they were exact, they were correct. Yeah, there were some nuances that we weren't really, that we'll have to change, but to have a set of minutes that you can publish and send out to people right afterwards, wow, that helped my executive committee members, and they are just ecstatic at the fact that my secretary, who is called Zaza Zoom, didn't have to take 4 to 6 months or even a year to write your annual committee report. It was amazing, and I was excited, and I use that term because of my eggs, but it was really great to have that function and AI moving forward. Getting to our structure, as you know, the funds of the Coalition of State Horse Councils was sent to our Equine Heritage Foundation to keep track of and pay for anything that we're doing with the coalition. Under that, you're spending $49 a month. We are spending $49 a month as a coalition. Plus, with your websites, you also pay for some programs at the beginning of every year. And those programs, as Justine has she's worked with our webmaster in the past, you know, they can be $200 at a time for a complete year. Yeah, I think another one, Justine, was $99. You have to have add-ons so that you can have functions like registration, functions like paying for events, and all kinds of structure, all kinds of functions. Well, Justine and I spoke. Nobody was using the website. We weren't reaching our communities. We weren't having people respond to us. So what we did is that we shut down the website. Now, I didn't get rid of the website at all, at any time, because of our relationship with our webmasters, ILGM. He's keeping it for me. Nothing that we've done is gone away. But what I did is I transferred some functionality to our Equine City Hall. And with our Equine City Hall, we can provide, through the City Hall function, all the things that we need right now. And I'm going to demonstrate to you what we've done so that you can see it. At the Equine City Hall site, I went ahead and got the information for our meeting from Justine just this morning. The first thing that I did is that I threw it on our calendar at the Equine City Hall. By me clicking on this site, bingo bango, within 7 minutes, Justine, I put this together with the link on it right there.
Can you share your screen?
Oh, that would be a good idea. I'm so sorry. I'm used to running these meetings and not being just a participant. This is so exciting that I can just join and not have to do anything here. Okay, let me give you this screen right here. This is what I'm looking at.
Okay.
This is the Equine City Hall. This is a portal. This is a place where people can join. This is a place that people, through any state, doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing, you can be a group under the Equine City Hall. Like I said, Justine sent me the stuff for the meeting this morning. I immediately put it in my calendar. By clicking on that coalition is having a meeting, all my information is right here. When I wanted to log on to the meeting, all I did was click this and bingo, I was at the Zoom meeting, and I could click this now, but it would probably knock out my Zoom thing now, but it goes right into our Zoom meeting for the coalition. So it was very handy. It was very easy to do. And it all came from this memo that was placed in our calendar, which is located on the Equine City Hall. I want to show you a few other things that can happen by utilizing the Equine City Hall. I have put the coalition in as a group. Now, just last week, I had a virtual meeting for our annual meeting, and I kept it up online for these purposes. I click on our annual meeting, and I want to look at the information of our annual meeting as a guest. I'm not a member of anything. I haven't paid a cent. So I click on that, and bingo, my complete annual meeting came up right here. Okay. All my guest speakers, everybody that was there. Here's all the Zoom contacts, so on and so forth. What's cool about this is that the online registration was closed. Let me see if I can get back to it somehow. I think I found a loophole. It may not be here anymore because I tested it this morning and it might have gone down. Let me see. It did go down. I apologize. But what's really good about this, I'll show you another thing. On January 9th, we can all ride in the stock show parade. And so again, I look at the stock show parade. I want to look at all the information on the stock show parade. It's all right here. This is all about the stock show parade and our riders. Anybody in the United States can come and ride in the stock show parade. But the cool thing about it, at the time that you see the notice and at the time you see the information, you click on register. Lo and behold, it tells you, it asks again, are you a member? So that if you want to become a member, you can. But you put in your first name, your last name, and you continue and you register for the event right here and now. So it is a one-step thing to go ahead and get done. When you are, I'm going to go back to the home page. So what I've showed you is that things are placed in the calendar. All the information about your events in your calendar. Then you can go ahead and click on that event. Then you can go ahead and register for the event. And it doesn't cost people, any group that's part of this program, it will cost them $125 a year to have all this functionality. I've already placed the coalition as a group in this site so that the coalition, we're going to waive the $125 fee. The other thing that we did so that people will start utilizing this function, and all of you can go to equinecityhall.org and have this on your computer right now as well. But we've waived all fees for anybody joining or any of the associates of groups joining so that we can start getting the information in here. So if you've got something you want to try to do on this site, you can do it now. You can place your things in a calendar. You can place your activities. You can do whatever you want. We just want people to try it so they can tell us what's wrong and what's right about everything. But when you go to the home page, this is the home page. If I want to go to a directory, we do offer directories. If we click on directories, you can see that we have a bunch of different groups that we are working with right now. And I believe the Coalition of State Horse Councils is in there. So if you just join as a free associate or join your state as a free organization, you can become a member of the group, the Coalition of State Horse Councils. It's not going to cost you anything, I promise you. And you could start utilizing the functionality of this so that you can see how it's all going to work. So under the coalition, if I do a search, you will find that none of you are there. All right.
Arizona on there?
Pardon me?
Looked like you had Arizona in there already.
I did, but I did not make them a group yet because I haven't talked to Chip yet.
Okay.
Okay, I want to make sure he was okay with that.
Yeah.
I did Arizona because it began with A and it was on the top of my list. That's all I'm telling you guys. Okay, a lot of the other functionalities are, if you do use our directory program for your state, let's say right now, the one group that I'm working with that I have a good directory for is our listing of state vets in the state of Colorado. So if you search for state vets, lo and behold, you'll see all the veterinarians that are approved by AAEP in our files. If I wanted to go ahead, do a new search, I want to find the under the group of state vets, and I only use them because I finally finished that last week. And I put in the country, and I put in our state vets. Oh, we don't need that. But I put the search criteria. I want to find the ones that are in Boulder. First, I have to spell it right. B-O-L-D-E-R. Only one, I only have one functioning eye these days, so I'm getting used to that. So I see all my veterinarians that are AAE approved right here in the state of Colorado in Boulder. There's nothing to say that my search couldn't be Kansas. And I don't know, maybe we have one in Kansas that's registered in Colorado. I don't know. It didn't happen though. Sorry, Justine, none of your people are here. But what I wanted to show you is that this directory and this calendar and even my emergency disaster information links can be anywhere that has an email address, that has a website. In our state of Colorado, people have to have brand inspections. They click on brand inspections, goes right to the brand inspector's site so they can get the up-to-date information. The other thing we're having trouble with is wildfires in the state of Colorado. So we have this wildfire set up here, but it can be any place in the United States, any place where they have evacuations. My point is that I just finally, after you guys have been hearing me talk about this site, and I think it's a total of 5 years, and I changed the name from Colorado Equine City Hall because I think regionally, Kansas, regionally, Nebraska, regionally, Wyoming, we can start building a site that's really functional for everybody to use. I was bounced out of this webinar, this meeting. I had an electronic surge in the office, so I had to log in, and I lost the other pages. Didn't lose the pages. I lost my website dashboard. But if groups come together, I don't care where you are, and you want to start using this stuff to build what you need to build, that perhaps can be even your website one day, you're not building it for naught. Everything is right here. And we don't call your people members, we call your people associates under your head, under your group. So where did I put my groups here? I put my groups under my directory.
So
And if
Bill, theoretically, each different state horse council could sign up and submit their calendar of events to you, eventually include their directory of veterinarians, et cetera. And then this could be just yet one other phone book, so to speak, that they can be sending people to for information, or people could be pulling.
Correct.
And-
And every one of your groups will have an administrator. And Justine can tell you, this is a very powerful website, a very powerful portal, association management tools. And because she went through
some of the training,
the training on it, it really has great power and a great way to unite our horse industry. So again, I'm working on a lot of different things here. At the same time, I'm working on a lot of different new programs, because we need to all come together, whether it's a racing region that we build, Justine, between you, Nebraska, and Colorado, to start uniting people. I know Wyoming is building tracks. If we can keep getting these people all working together, it'll be absolutely amazing. So this is kind of like what I've been working on most of the summer long, along with legislation that we can start utilizing. In part of my grant proposal for welfare through our state, I'm putting in there a component to help support the finalization of this program. Because as the USDA has said to you today, there's only one person working on the equine diseases in the United States. I'm the only one in our state working on this project. We don't have other people helping us. I have one board member that has been instrumental, that has helped me starting this August. But lo and behold, she's done a great job, and is doing a great job. But if we can have funding to get this accomplished, my goodness, folks, it'd be a great asset to the American Horse Council and to the state horse councils. So that's what I got for you for now.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. So to your point, you had said it would take an administrator from each place. I think what I'm translating that to mean is that I, from Kansas Horse Council, could sign up as an admin to manage the Kansas Horse Council information and keep that updated. So if your state doesn't necessarily have all the directory and calendar, or you want to duplicate that on a wider screen where people might be searching, then you could share your information within Equine City Hall, and it's just another resource or another location where they could find more about your state, your activities, and your service personnel there. So Bill, the veterinarians list, did you go to AAEP and request a list of the veterinarians for your state, or how did you procure that list?
I did. Okay. And they do not want to give it out. So it was very, very difficult. I begged them so that we can start showing people how their information can go further. Most horse organizations in the country say, well, we have our list. This is our list. But when people in need don't know that there's an equine, there's an association called the American Equine Practitioners Association. And we can have a link for them. In fact, I have a link for them right here. I put the disease control here. I can put their link in. But new horse people in our state are not familiar with these kind of things. They just own a horse. They didn't know all this stuff is out there. So by having the lists in here, I think people will learn that there's other agencies out here. I think people will learn that the American Horse Council is here. If we all start combining our lists, I've reached out to a lot of people. Like there's another group, that is putting out there all this great news and all this great stuff about horse shows and results of shows. And I'm hoping to get the ASPCA Right Horse Program, all of their horse rescues here. I think I've got that group already set up and I'm getting very close. But people don't know where horse rescues are. And on top of that, I'm only going to put in here the horse rescues that have gone through the Right Horse Program, through the ASPCA. Because what we're learning is that a lot of horse rescues come and go. They haven't gotten through the process of education to make sure that they are effective horse councils, and they're going to be horse rescues, and they're going to be there for years. So that's where I think we can be. And one of the other taglines I'm bringing, it says bringing the horse community together. And I'm calling this the Horsemen's Support Center. I'm changing the influence of it, that this is not only a portal, but let's make it a support center for the horse industry. So you can go to one place and find this information. I plan to have every horse council that's already listed with us, Justine, on here already, so that they can reach out to all of you. Most of you now are from Pennsylvania on this call, but people from Pennsylvania are moving to Colorado, and there are people that move from Colorado. They want to move to Pennsylvania, or they want the horse show information, so on and so forth. All of the coalition members will be on this site, but if you start utilizing it, I think people will learn what a great trail program they have in Pennsylvania. I think the people in Maryland will learn about the Maryland Horse Council and their horse industry boards. So let's all work together, and as long as I'm around, the coalition will have this at no cost.
All right. Very much appreciate that, Bill. Thank you. And good luck and good job on all that you've gotten done so far. That's a long, tedious process. And I don't know how you find time to input all the data when you're juggling so many other things. So well done.
Thank you.
All right. Well, are there any questions with the few that are still hanging in here?
What's for lunch?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess with that means we should probably adjourn and let everybody go have their lunch. So thank you all for being part of this today. A lot of great information. I will share out the recording Zoom link and maybe even the AI Zaza Zoom secretarial notes.
That was a surprise to me.
That was
a welcome surprise, a good gift.
That was pretty cool. Okay. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day and great rest of your week.
Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.